I think a lot of times I've been in churches that they're just waiting for the rock star to walk through their doors that's just ready to go. They're 100%. Like, if that happens for you, great, but I think that's the exception, not the rule.
This is the Church Growth Nation podcast.
What's up, everybody? This is Ross Turner with the Vibrant Agency, and we're talking to Travis, the main man Clark, who has no idea how to buy hats. He just buys random things from Ross Dress for Less and puts them on. And I'm not editing that out.
Giant.
Yeah. Well, it's okay. It's okay. You'll still make it to heaven. But I wanted to just, I just wanted to introduce everybody to you guys. I mean, Canvas Church is one of, as you know, I love to talk about you guys. You're one of my favorite churches up there just because I like the culture. I like the uniqueness of your church. One of the things that I find, Travis, is with ARC and with CMN and a lot of the other, big networks of churches, there's a lot of replication that happens. A lot of churches are kind of similar to each other in the classes, in the sermon series that they have, in the style of everything. And it's fun for me to work with you guys because it's different. You guys have your own DNA and you're very intentional about that. The culture of San Francisco, where you guys are, is different. And I love it. And so I think, if you wouldn't mind, can you just take a few minutes for the people who aren't familiar with you or the church? Tell us about Canvas Church. Tell us about how you started in ministry and kind of what God put on your heart. Tell us about your family. Kind of give them an introduction to the church.
Yeah, definitely. So the church has been going a little over 5 years. It started on October 13, 2013, but it obviously started as is the case with every pastor or church planner, is the church starts, years before the launch date in the heart of that pastor. And so for us, it really began probably 3-4 years before we actually launched, just feeling this heart to start a church in a place where there weren't a lot of churches, and in a place that we loved as well. And so we love San Francisco, and as many people know, there's just not a lot of churches here. It's kind of been a ghost town or a graveyard, or kind of all the metaphors we've been given. And and when we came, it was pretty true. But we really got there because I wasn't born and raised in the church. I wasn't, born in the back pew. My wife has a very different story. She was born and raised in the church. Mom who prayed with her every night. Just had that Christian house. It wasn't my story. So I remember being dropped off at a church by my dad. He had moved away when I was younger and had come back to visit me on my birthday. And very long story short, there were just I was beginning to get involved in drugs and alcohol and at a really young age. And so my dad, I think, just didn't know what to do with that. So he dropped me off at a church, which ended up being a blessing in disguise. As a teenager, you're like, this is weird. Why'd you do that? But now that I look back, I think it really was God's kind of hand over my life. And he dropped me off there, and the youth pastor really reached out to me and I think stepped into a role in my life that I needed with my dad being gone for a lot of it. And so I found something in the church, and that was that this sense of belonging, this sense that I could have doubts and questions and not even believe, because I definitely didn't go in and just start believing the first day. I was stubborn. I was definitely a skeptic and not afraid to voice that. And over time, I just felt like, man, I can be here and I can be messy and I can be a person in progress. And yet there's this really powerful thing called grace in this church. And so when I started following Jesus, I really, I just realized I want to be a part of building that. I want to be a part of building a community where people like myself who are coming in through the doors, they're angry, they're skeptical, they have more questions than answers, that they could go there and find a place to belong before they believe, that they, could be with us before they agree with us. They may never agree with us. They could still be with us. And so, that's why my wife and I started the church is really because we wanted to build a place for people to belong no matter who you are. And so San Francisco is a place where there just is not a lot of churches for people. And so we felt what a great opportunity for us to give our lives to something bigger than ourselves and to be a part of shaping a city that is in a lot of ways shaping the world. And so we came here and we had 23 people move from Arizona where we were and join this church plant. And now 5+ years later, we've grown from 23 to about 350, and God's been really, really good. We're excited that the city, I don't think, is a graveyard anymore. I really think it's a garden, and there's a lot of new things kind of bursting through the soil in San Francisco.
Is your wife, is she born and raised in the church?
Yeah. Born and raised. Mom prayed with her every night. We have very different stories, which is good because we can kind of be well-rounded together.
When did you hit in your story that you got to a point where you were saying, I'm going to be a pastor, and like realizing, I think I'm actually going to do this?
Pretty early on. I mean, I started following Jesus later in high school, and just my personality type has always been 0 to 100, and that applied to Jesus as well. I really, when I crossed that line of faith, I was like, not only do I believe, but I want to be a part of helping others believe as well and participate in what Jesus is doing. And so it was probably junior year in high school. I had my eyes set on being an actor and being in film to some degree, but that all just kind of went out the window when I realized, hey, you know what? If I could do anything with my life, it would be building the church. And so really just set out on that track late in high school, and had a youth pastor opportunity really early on in my life that allowed me to get my education, but also get my hands dirty in ministry. And so now I've been in pastoral ministry in the church for 13 years. So
what a unique situation. I mean, San Francisco is known as a place that's incredibly liberal and is incredibly somewhat anti-traditional church beliefs. How do you handle that? Do you get pushback? Do you get people who are blatant haters? Do you have people who are more just skeptics, but they're open to it? I mean, what's your story on that?
Yeah, I mean, we've heard all those things. I mean, before we moved out here, I think maybe we even had some of those assumptions that, we're going to face all this pushback and people are not going to want us here and all that. I mean, we faced a couple people that just didn't like us because we were a church. But honestly, what's been so surprising is the amount of openness that is here, the amount of receptivity to the idea of God and hope and love and justice and the good news. It's really quite surprising how people are open here, because that wasn't what we were told before we came. I have a guy named Senny who was at a sports bar here in San Francisco I would go to and hang out with, and not a believer at all, but over the course of time, I was able to just ask him. I was like, hey, Senny, why do you think we're here? What's this whole life thing about? And he said, I think we're here to love this creator that's somewhere involved in this thing called life, and but also love our fellow man. And he doesn't use the categories or language maybe that I use, but we're actually very much on the same page. And so when I really realized, hey, we probably want more of the same things than we don't. And that really was freeing to realize that the city wants hope, and they want love, and they want grace. And I feel a lot like Paul when he goes into Athens and Acts, and he points at all the gods. He's like, you guys are really spiritual. Like, he doesn't go in and just start firing on all cylinders. He's just kind of like, hey, you're really spiritual. He found commonality. And then he said, let me talk about this unnamed God. His name is Jesus. I feel like a lot of times that's what we're doing here, that we come in and we're like, man, you guys want community, you want love, you want hope, you want justice. Let's talk about Jesus, because he wants all those things as well. And we found that people are far more receptive to that. And sure, there's some, ethical and moral tensions that exist in a city like San Francisco, but we've really found at the end of the day, though, that we can eventually have great conversations on that, but there's a lot more in common than not.
Yeah. When you guys are planning a sermon series or planning an event, do you feel like you have to do things differently than a church that is in the Bible Belt, Texas, or something like that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah, 100%. So, I mean, I would say a large demographic of our church, maybe 40, 50% even, is what you would categorize as the nuns demographic. that they were given faith at some point in time. They were raised in a house of faith. Maybe they even believed it, but that faith broke down, or they found that the version of faith they were given was actually not helpful anymore, even dangerous. And so they walked away completely from faith. We have found that demographic is strong in San Francisco and strong in our church. And so whenever we do a series, we're really asking the question, hey, what is a nun? None, not N-U-N. What is a nun? What tensions are they going to deal with when we talk about this? And we can't just say the little kind of Christian platitude or bumper sticker, because they heard that before. They walked away from that faith. And so we've had to really think, how do we approach this at an angle that's fresh, that's new? It's not compromising truth, but perhaps is deconstructing the version of faith that they've walked away with and helping them reconstruct a new one that is built on Jesus and being an apprentice of Jesus. And so, it changes everything. Like I said earlier, I think the biggest part is we just can't assume the bumper stickers are going to work here, because they won't, or the little taglines are going to work here, because they won't. The assumption, we can't assume everyone believes what we believe, because they don't. And what's different from here versus Texas or the Midwest or Bible Belt is that if they don't agree with you, they're going to tell you here. There's not this hierarchical sort of system in place where they go, well, you're the pastor, you obviously know more about this than I do. They don't care if you're the pastor. If they think you're full of it, they're going to tell you, which is fun. I love that.
Tell me, what was the process when you were thinking of the name of the church? Because Canvas Church is such a cool name. How did that come to fruition?
Yeah, we really just believe that every human being was created by God to create. We believe that we were imagined to imagine, to be human is to create. We get that from Genesis 1:26, that in the very beginning we were created in the image or likeness of God to rule. In other words, you go back to the original language, you could almost say that in Genesis 1:26, God has put man and woman in this world, and he's saying, hey, let's make a world together. Let's create something in partnership. And so Canvas was just sort of the picture that worked so well with what we believed it meant to be human, that life is this kind of blank canvas, and now together in partnership with God, we can, through whatever creative endeavor God has put you in, whether you're an accountant or a musician or a lawyer or a barista or a janitor, to be human is to create. And so to live life fully alive is to follow Jesus in creating a future worth fighting for. And so that was kind of the heartbeat behind the name and the visual of Canvas.
Tell me, the church is going well. You guys are growing. You're reaching new people. You definitely have a culture. You definitely have a unique identity, brand, whatever you want to call it. Has it always been going well? Were there years when you doubted if you made the right decision, if you chose the right city? Is there anything that you would be comfortable sharing about that?
Yeah, for sure. I'll say honestly, I've heard some horror stories from other planters of their launch teams all leaving, and they're alone, and they want to, multiple times just want to give up. I can't necessarily say that's our story. We're fortunate that 18 of the 23 people are still here 5+ years later. We're very, very blessed with that and very thankful for them. And we haven't necessarily had to fight the loneliness bug. I think that the battles we faced early on was I think I put the wrong people in positions of leadership just because I needed a person in that position of leadership, and for example, we had a worship leader first 6 months of the church, just was not a good fit, but I needed a worship leader. And after 6 months, had to let him go. And that was 99.9% my fault. I should have vetted that out more. I should have had a better system and really set that leader up for more success, or at least the opportunity to discover that this probably wasn't a good fit. And so that's on me. I think that was a rookie mistake for sure, to just rush. And because when you're a planter, you're like, we got to get anybody. And I learned pretty quickly, no, you need the right people, not just any person. You need the right leader, not just any leader. And so I learned the hard way a little bit, and that was tough, because you go in the first year and you're like, man, we're gonna you have this vision and you don't want to fail. You don't want to make any bad calls. And then I did. And it worked out because I think in the end, like once it was realized that, hey, this is just not compatible. This isn't going to work. We kind of made a move pretty quick, and that person is now thriving where they are, and we're in a better position. Like everybody won because we were willing to kind of look that problem in the eyes. So that was discouraging. I would say probably the biggest battle I have faced though is as we've grown, really being being okay. Shutting down systems that worked when we were 50 to 100 people, but realizing that system doesn't work anymore to get us from 100 to 200 or 100 to 300. We have to think differently if we're going to reach people that we're not reaching yet as we grow. And so, it can be difficult because you kind of get used to that system working, and then you start hitting a ceiling and realize, man, okay, we got to think differently. And that's, it hits your pride, right? Because you have to admit something's not working or it's not working as good as it could have. And so that constant evolution of leadership and internal organization has not been easy, for sure. But, what's helped me is getting the right people in my corner that are wiser and have done ministry longer, and that will, for lack of a better analogy, kind of be the trash can I can vomit in every once in a while. And then they'll give me, they'll give me some wisdom on how to respond and how to move forward. So, organizational structure, I think for me has been the biggest battle because it's evolving as we've grown.
Going back to when you had to let the worship leader go, I totally resonate with the problem that you had, which is I need this position filled. Let's just get somebody in there now. Somebody is better than nobody. And then it doesn't work out because you can only train somebody so much. You can only adapt culture-wise so much, personalities and stuff. But what do you do? I'm even asking for myself, like, what do you do when there's a position that you need, but you don't have the perfect person, or you can't afford the perfect person? What are you just supposed to keep the position vacant? What are you supposed to do?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if there's a bulletproof answer for it, but I guess my recommendation for sure would be, see, who you can raise up, see who you have, and begin to really be intentional about pulling out the best leadership within them. I think a lot of times I've been in churches that they're just waiting for the rock star to walk through their doors that's just ready to go. They're 100%. Like, if that happens for you, great, but I think that's the exception, not the rule. I think it's our job as leaders to call out the potential and promise and those that we get to serve and lead. And so if you have somebody that, hey, they're 50%, okay, right now that's all. We can't hire somebody that's at 80 or 90. We have somebody that's at 50. So we're gonna have a very honest conversation about what it's gonna look like to get them from 50 to 60 over this next year, and just taking it one day at a time. I think that's, especially when you can't hire, you got to be faithful with what you have and not despise small beginnings, because you never know. You may have a diamond in the rough, and by just waiting for, somebody that's at like a Hillsong level, worship leader to walk through your doors, you may be missing the answer to your prayers right in front of you the entire time. But like, God is calling you to be a catalyst in their leadership. And so, don't run from the challenge, run towards it. And see it as an opportunity, not an obstacle. I think a lot of times it really does come down to your perspective. Like, your biggest problem often isn't your problem; it's your perspective on your problem. And so if you're looking at your team, you go, "Well, there's nothing here. We're never going to get anything with them." Well, guess what? You're probably going to get what you expect. But if you look at your leaders and go, "Hey, you know what? No, there's untapped potential here." And I'm going to invest in them and pull the best out of them and be intentional about getting them from 50 to 60, then 60 to 70%. Then I think that attitude, not only will your leaders be better because of it, your ministry will be better, and then you'll grow and you'll be able to have those sort of hiring conversations. So I would just say, hey, look, check your perspective, check your people, and trust the process. Trust the process. If you're pulling out the best in people and you have a clear vision, You're going to be okay. And it's going to work out, but don't rush it. I think it's Rick Warren who said it, hire slow, fire fast. And I'm sure he took that from somebody else, but I think it's a good rule of thumb: hire slow, fire fast. The word probably, most of my mistakes have been when I've rushed people in positions of leadership that they weren't ready for yet. So,
which position was your first hire, and which one was your second hire?
Yeah, so our first hire was worship, which is unique. Most of the time we were told kids was so important and everything. San Francisco, there's literally more dogs than kids in the city. Like there's just not a lot of kids here. We, in the neighborhood we were in, the church we were really, really young, and most of our people didn't have kids. So we knew though that there's something about music that brings people together. Like really good music brings people together. You'll go to a Coldplay concert or a really good show, and there's Republicans, there's Democrats, there's Christians, there's atheists. And for whatever reason, in that moment when the music is really good, all those categories sort of go away. And so we really felt like, we wanted to invest in the environment of worship and music and make sure it was high quality, because we felt like for a lot of people, that's the thing that kind of gets them going, hey man, this moves me, and I want to come back. Because people aren't going to come back if they don't feel better when they leave. They're just not going to come back. And worship or good music, at least good art, moves people. And so we wanted to really get a good musician to begin to create that atmosphere. And
your second hire, do you have that?
Yes, our second hire was actually our family ministries. And she was kind of a Swiss Army knife. And we kind of brought her on because she was a great event coordinator. We needed someone to help us with our small group events, and as well as like building up our family ministries as it began to grow. So we started getting a couple kids, and we really realized like for the first 6 months, we're like, we're going to wait till kids and families come, and then we'll really start amping up our kids or our family ministries. But then we realized, and we should have realized this, was that when a family comes and if you have nothing there for them, they're not going to wait for you. They're going to go to the church that has that. So we really kind of, our mantra was, we're going to dress for the miracle. And so by bringing Ashley, was her name, on as their family ministries director, we began to dress for the miracle, believing, hey, we're going to get more families, more kids. And we brought her on to get us ready for that. And so now we have a lot more families and a lot more kids. And I think it really does, it's probably because we didn't wait for it. We prepared for it.
When you were in Arizona and you made the realization that you think God's calling you to San Francisco to plant this church, how worried were you about the fact that you might be in poverty?
That's a good question, man. See, my wife was more worried than I was. The way I'm wired, I just always assume it's gonna work out somehow, some way. Even if we have to get scrappy, it's gonna work. I would say my wife though was worried about that. A lot, just because we were moved to San Francisco, the most expensive city in the country. It surpassed New York, a studio apartment. If you wanted to be in a safe area of the city, you're not going to get it less than $1,700, and that's a small studio apartment. We were really faced with those realities, and yeah, it was a fear for sure. But we just decided to step out anyways, and the Lord has provided every step of the way.
And now you make that $500K a year.
Yeah, it's just going great. So easy now. Yeah.